In 2020, something didn't add up. When fear replaced common sense and critical thinking, and protocols stopped matching what we were seeing, a lot of us started asking questions. And once you start digging, once you start researching, you can't unsee it. Welcome to Nurses Out Loud. I'm Jodi O'Malley, ER nurse and nursing ethics educator. And this is where we talk truth, patient rights, and real-world healthcare so you can make informed decisions and advocate with confidence. If you've been looking for your people, here we are. If this resonates, if you find yourself nodding along, please like, follow, and share this show with at least one person who needs it. And if this episode offers continuing education credit, check the show notes for learning objectives, disclosures, and exactly how to earn your certificate. Headlines are flying. A federal judge blocks vaccine policy changes. People saying science won. Others saying the system just protected itself. But here's the problem. Most people don't understand what happened. They don't understand what the ACIP committee was about to do. That is the Advisory Committee of Immune Practices. They don't understand why vaccine-injured individuals were supposed to be heard. And they definitely don't understand what a federal judge actually has the power to do. So today we're going to break this down simply, clearly, and honestly, not from the lens of politics, but from the lens of nurses who have lived through what happens when questioning the system comes with consequences. But today, first, let's hear a quick message from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by West Cocoa Pharmacy. If you're someone who has started to question what's in the products you're using, whether they're medications, topicals, or everyday health items, if you are also an individual that wants to look at repurposed drug therapies like ivermectin, cancer protocols, they call it alternative, West Cocoa Pharmacy is focused on transparency and alternatives. You can speak to Nurse Donna for free and decide for yourself. That's cocopharmacy.com, COCOA pharmacy. And I'll also put the link in the show notes. All right, guys, so let's get into it. I didn't want to have this conversation alone because moments like this require voices from nurses who didn't just watch what happened over the last 5-6 years. They lived it. Joining me today is Nurse Jennifer Bridges. Jennifer is a registered nurse who became nationally recognized after speaking out during COVID about patient care, hospital policies, vaccine mandates at Houston Methodist, and what she witnessed happening at the bedside. She was one of the early nurses who actually really inspired me as well because I felt like, oh, I'm not alone. But she said something isn't right here. And instead of being heard, she was silenced, targeted, and ultimately became part of a landmark legal battle that brought national attention to nurses' rights, everybody's healthcare workers' rights, medical freedom, and informed consent. Since then, she has continued to advocate for patients, for transparency in healthcare, and for nurses who felt like they did not have a voice in the system. And I'll tell you, Jennifer doesn't just talk about courage, she lived it. She is actually featured in several of the modules in my ethics course, my flagship course called Navigating Ethical Waters, a comprehensive approach to nursing ethics in a post-2020 world. And up until April 7th, we get started. So the link will also be in the show notes. All right, Jennifer, I'm so glad that you're here with me today and that we are finally together.
We finally are.
After all of these years. I mean, because what we're watching play out right now feels very similar, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Absolutely. I'm glad you were able to come down here to Texas to visit me. It's good to be together. Even though so many of us are across the country, you become lifelong family friends forever after being through these journeys like this together.
Yeah, our friendship was definitely forged through the fire. And, you know, when we have nurses that speak out, because there's many of us. It's not just, just a few of us. There are many, but so many people don't understand what our actual code of ethics compels us to do. It doesn't just suggest we do certain things. It actually mandates us. So, Jennifer, today people are saying that science won. With the ACIP committee, let's talk a little bit about that. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he understands vaccine injury because he had been hearing from parents for years about it. He is the head of HHS, and the ACIP committee on March 18th was supposed to meet and have a public discussion about injuries. People were going to be able to tell their stories, and they were going to have some scientific discourse and debate and hear what people had to say. Instead, a federal judge ruled. He put an injunction, and he said that the ACIP committee cannot meet publicly, and that meeting was actually postponed. He also said that the changes that were recommended to the childhood immunization schedule, which from my knowledge was basically that pediatricians just had to have an informed conversation. He didn't remove people's choice to inject themselves. He just said that people needed to have an informed conversation with their pediatrician on the risk, benefits, etc. And so all of that was blocked.
I find that rather funny that just because one side of the spectrum wants to talk about it, wants to share, this is what happened to me, this is what happened to hundreds of thousands of people, and a judge is going to stop them from talking. Ask yourself this question, when in science, when somebody's trying to develop a theory, run an experiment, anything, when is it ever based on just one sole data, one sole fact, one side of the spectrum? It's not. You're supposed to look at all the conclusions, everything that took place, put it all together, and then decide from there. Is this good? Is this bad? Does the benefits outweigh the risks? What is everything involved? But no, the judge is saying instead, no, we don't need to hear this whole other side. All these people that died or injured, suffering for the rest of their life, their views don't matter. Those can't be facts, right? That's just their opinion. But no, you're watching these people, and there are people that didn't make it. There are people that passed away, and you're seeing what has happened to them, and you can't ignore that. But ask yourself this, instead of looking at the real science, all sides of the spectrum, is this maybe just they don't want it out there? They don't want to talk about it? This judge and whoever else is behind him, and who's paying this judge, and who's telling this judge what to say? Somebody behind all this is like, no, we don't want this to get out because we don't want people to know this is actually a thing. So think about what is real science and what is someone's version of science.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, thing with Jennifer and I just, talking to one another about this, you had said, why not have both sides present, right? Have a debate and discourse where the American Academy of Pediatricians can get together, or anybody who would have their hand in this injunction. So that a judge did stay it. He stayed it because he said that there was a risk to the public. So why not have both sides get together and then let the public hear, let the public weigh in, and then go from there? That is something that we hope will happen. And I think, with Robert F. Kennedy in the position that he's in, can certainly help that. So, I mean, when you look at what happened today, Jennifer, like a judge stepping in and pausing this, do you feel like this is about protecting patients or protecting the system?
Not at all. As a patient myself, I want to know all the risks and all the side effects. I want to know, what is going to happen to my body? What's it going to do once I put it in myself? But instead of touching on that, you're just going to ignore all that. And what judge has a right to say that these people and their adverse reactions is what has happened to them? Doesn't matter. You don't need to share that with the public, because there could be people still sitting there, that hasn't decided whether I'm going to take it or not, and they need to be properly informed. You need to know the whole spectrum, not just one little factor of it that somebody wants you to know. You're entitled to hear everything related to that medication.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, when you hear people say that science won, What goes through your mind as a nurse who lived through COVID? Because what we were told was science didn't always feel like what we were seeing at the bedside.
No, their definition of science is not accurate. Science is proved on, what you can prove, what you can figure out, what you can look at and see with your own eyes under different, causes and effects of an experiment, basically, right? So they changed that. Every time you turn the page, they were rewriting definitions, they were rewriting protocols. They were basically just winging it to follow their agenda. But there was I don't look at it, there's actually any science behind it, because the things that I saw in the hospitals and the things that occurred had never happened in the history of medicine ever. So there was zero science to actually follow.
Yeah, and what was it that you were seeing? I mean, we're going to do a longer show on your story, and like I said, guys, if you want to hear more, you can check out the ethics course starting. But what was it? What was it that you did at Houston Methodist?
I was a nurse working in a medical surgical inpatient unit for about 8 years. I did about a year in the COVID unit, so I did everything related to that. But a lot of the things to briefly touch on, like picture seeing your hospital, at very first, they did give the patients hydroxychloroquine, right? And for a couple months, it was working. It was helping to treat COVID patients. And then a normal science would be, okay, this is working. Let's keep it. It's effective. But no, what did they do? They pulled it and they stopped using it, and they wouldn't allow pharmacy.
If you are a nurse that is fed up with the sick care model, I have a solution for you. My name is Melissa Schreidfatter, and I am the owner and founder of the Functional Nurse Academy. FNA is the most comprehensive functional medicine training program on the market, specifically tailored to nurses. It is self-paced and equips LPNs, RNs, and nurse practitioners to practice functional medicine, address the root causes of dysfunction, and start their independent functional medicine practices. At FNA, you will learn how to order labs, functional health reports, create customized wellness plans, package and price your services, and even how to market your brand effectively. Graduates earn 90 nursing CEUs, and then they qualify for multiple board certification titles. They also will have access to our exclusive tools, such as our Functional Nurse Toolkit, our social media and marketing kit. And I don't want to just train you and send you on your way. So you also will get access to me each month via the Functional Nurse Academy monthly mentorship program, where you will be able to attend a live class with me each month. So say goodbye to sick care and start your dream career as a functional medicine nurse. Enroll today at functionalnurseacademy.com.
To even like doctors to prescribe it, or the pharmacy to give it to the patients. And a lot of us ask the doctors, like, why? Like, this seemed to be working. Why'd we stop it? Nobody knew. The only thing the doctors could say would, it is the new protocol of Methodist. But if something you're trying actually works, why would you stop using it? So that goes against everything science has ever taught us, right? And then even down to the N95s. PPE, you're supposed to wear an N95 once, pitch it. You're supposed to wear the gown once, pitch it. And then all of a sudden it turned into, we'll put your N95 in a bag and we're going to put it through some ultraviolet light that we've never done before with N95s. There's no science to back this, because in the history of N95s, it was wear it once and throw it out. Because once you take it out of that room, it's contaminated. You can't use it. And all of a sudden it was, let's put it in a Ziploc bag, seal it. You can't wear makeup, because if you wear makeup, it'll contaminate it. And then let's run it through the ultraviolet lights and use it about another 2 weeks. Like, that is not science. And then the gowns, instead of the gowns being like kept in the room where they should be, because they're supposedly contaminated, right, with the virus and that, instead they were hung up outside in hallways where everybody walking by breathed it in, touched it, brushed by it. But now all of a sudden that's okay. Like, there's,
and then we were using it to go into multiple patients' rooms.
Yeah. And you could put on the same thing and keep walking into several patients' rooms, sharing germs with, because maybe even though everybody has quote unquote COVID, there could be different things underlining as well, other things going on with them. So these are just a few things to touch on. I could list so many, but these are things that is not typical in an actual science background.
Now, talk about Houston Methodist was the first hospital system in the country to mandate that healthcare workers get the injection. Jennifer, talk a little bit about what was happening at that time. Was that in the summer of 2021?
Well, Houston Methodist was the first hospital, the first anything in the country to get the COVID shot. We were actually getting it late, probably November, December of
It was December
2020. 2020 is when we first got it, but they only were the batches they got. They were only giving it to your very elite, wealthy donors, doctors, things like that. That was the first course of the people that were getting the shot. And then they'd open it up to more in the community. Then whatever workers, whatever hospital staff that wanted it on their own accord, which was only maybe 15 to 20% of the whole entire staff, which you're talking 8 hospitals in their chain, multiple primary cares. I mean, you're talking a good probably 40,000 or plus employees, many. Only 15, 20% wanted it on their own. And then, of course, everybody started, whispering like, oh, are they going to force us? But surely who would force you to take something that's not even FDA approved? Who would force you to put something in your body that has clearly no short-term or long-term data? You have no idea what this is going to do to you. It was developed in less than a year, supposedly, but yet they know this is 100% safe and effective. Think about just your own personal critical thinking skills and even just common sense. If I just developed this thing in my backyard like less than a year ago, and I'm like, here, it's 100% safe and effective, how can you even know that? Like, there's no way you can know that. So then we started hearing kind of word, that this mandate might take place. So a bunch of us got kind of proactive. We wanted to nip this in the bud before we were forced, out of our jobs, basically. And it did no good. Like, I've sat down, talked with my CEO, CNO, nobody cared. It was basically nothing but bully tactics, like, shut up, don't talk about this. This mandate's, going to happen. And then, and it did. And they didn't give us the date, but I found it very coincidental that the day after I met with them, trying to come up with some kind of solution, just work with us. We spent a year in the COVID units, no vaccine, no nothing. We all caught it. We were good. At least let us wear PPE if we didn't want it. Nothing. They were not willing to even reason with us at all. Even though I produced a lot of scientific facts and a lot of data, it was no, be quiet. This is going to happen. The next day we got our email from Mark Boom, the head CEO, which was in the middle of April. And they basically said, June 7th, 2021, you have to take at least your first dose, which of course you were supposed to need 2, right? At the beginning. And if not, you were 2-week unpaid suspension and then terminated. And the sad part is before they mandated it, they offered you a $500. It was called the Hope Bonus. We will pay you $500 if you inject this medication into you before we actually force you into it. So several others, another maybe 10% jumped on board to get this $500. But little did they know, after taxes, I think it came to like $320 or something. Like, it was such a joke. I'm not selling my life for $320. I'm just rough estimating what it was. So then, of course, the mandate showed up. And I can't even tell you the hundreds and maybe thousands of people that reached out to me because I started speaking out on the news, and they were scared. They were wanting to talk to me, but hiding me in stairwells and closets because they didn't want to be seen talking to me about it. They were just begging for hope. They were crying, calling me crying before sitting down in the chair to get the shot because they didn't want to take it. But they had no choice. Their Methodists had zero sympathy for us. They didn't care. My own CEO, David Bernard's words was, your individual autonomy is not as important as this mandate. If you don't like it, there's the door. Some nice little college student coming up would love to have your job. And that's how we were treated, segregated, bullied, like left and right with everything, until finally June 7th came and we walked out with our pride and held a huge protest outside to their disbelief. And then 2 weeks later, we were terminated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And her case made it all the way up to the Supreme Court so that healthcare workers, was it just healthcare workers not to get mandated for the shot?
Well, our case involved about 116 plaintiffs that were all under Houston Methodist. whether they were, cafeteria workers up to doctors. The case was for us, but our case would have been a set of big precedents because we could prove at a federal level that it was 100% illegal, that federally you were not allowed to force somebody into an EUA status medication against their will with coercion and no informed consent.
Yeah. And the number one tenet of medical ethics is the Nuremberg Code that says that you should not be coerced into an experiment. We need to be given all the information. The Code of Ethics for nurses is very clear on this. You need to give your patient, and who is your patient? Your patient is anyone who identifies you as a nurse. Right now, you're listening to us. You are the recipients of our care right now, right? And that says that we are to give all the information, even if it's not available at your hospital or your place of business. Okay, guys. I mean, I remember, Jennifer, when I was recording what was happening in the hospital, I went to my boss because my boss said that they were talking about reporting me to the board for talking about ivermectin. And I had read the Code of Ethics. I think I'd read it for the very first time because I was struggling with my conscience telling me that this is not right. And so I was searching and I found the Code of Ethics. They don't teach us the Code of Ethics in nursing school. If you were to ask any nurse, and if you're a nurse listening, what is the Code of Ethics? If you start talking about autonomy and benevolence and non-maleficence, veracity, if you start talking about that, you're talking about the principles of bioethics. But the Code of Ethics has 10 provisions and it outlines any scenario that you're going to come across as a nurse. And I remember going into my supervisor's office standing there, and she said, Jodi, you got to stop talking. You got to stop talking. You can only talk about the medications that the doctor ordered. Yeah. And I said, that's not true. That is not true. That is called being institutionalized, guys, which the Code of Ethics addresses, which I will be addressing in my workshop. We have to resist being institutionalized. And like Jennifer is saying, I think there's so many nurses, like she said, I agree with you. I believe only maybe 15% actually wanted it. What did they have to do? They had to start coercing it. If anybody has to coerce you to do anything, that's not your own free will, right? And I know that many people say, well, they weren't forced. And I said that too. I was like, we didn't tie anybody down and shoot them. But if you're messing with somebody's livelihood, if you're messing with somebody's ability to maybe care for their family member, see their family member, you are, in a sense, forcing them. And that is what I speak up against. And then let me tell you, I'm just going to be really honest. It's really hard to get nurses to understand what the Code of Ethics is because a lot of people say, I'm a good person. I don't need the code. Well, if you were a nurse who had a belief, who didn't want to take the shot, who saw harm, who didn't report it, right? Because we were being bombarded with this narrative of safe and effective, safe and effective. You're going to kill grandma. You don't care about society if you don't trust the science and trust Fauci. Then, it just, here, you take it. I'm just
I want you to think more than anything, just think common sense. If something was 100% safe and effective, and a human being is not God. We are not capable of creating something that is 100% safe and effective. There's some people who are even deathly allergic to the grass. People can die from too much Tylenol. Everything has a side effect and an adverse reaction. So think about that for a minute. And if something actually was 100% safe and effective, would they have to bully you, force you, pay you, coerce you, threaten your livelihood in order to take it? They wouldn't have to. Everybody would be lining up ready to do it. And I'm with you. I've had a lot of people say where they weren't forced to, there wasn't a gun to their head. And I completely disagree with that rhetoric. I was very fortunate at the time, and I had a loving husband that was behind me. but others weren't so fortunate because I was like, I don't even know if I'll be able to afford to stay in my house. We might have to sell everything. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. But the amount of people that reached out to me that said, I'm a single parent. My son has a chronic condition. I have to keep my insurance. I can't lose this. I'm the breadwinner of the family. My husband's job doesn't make as much. Like, I don't know how we're going to provide for our family. And when you spend years of your life going to nursing school, learning how to do this, working years at your career, it's not simple just to get fired and pick up another job like that. I know nurses to this day that had to leave the profession because they couldn't get into something that was going to equally provide for them the way they had it at their current job. So I don't agree with that. And regardless of people say you weren't forced into it, I'm sorry, but ask anybody under other situations, right? If somebody tells you you have to put something in your body, whether you like it or not, that is not a good thing. And that can apply to anything. I mean, that's technically rape, right? I mean, that's so, and people can look at it however they want, but it's simple. It's just good versus bad. It's just very simple, black and white. You should never force somebody to do something against their will. And it's that simple.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jennifer, what would you say to the nurse right now who's watching this and still feels afraid to speak up?
I'll tell you, it is scary. I was a little scared at first because I didn't know what they could do to me. But at the end of the day, what I tell everybody is just a little bit of courage. And I'm sorry it's windy here. Just a little bit of courage. Just doing the right thing is the most important thing. I told my son and everybody else, at the end of the day, we're all going to meet our maker, right? When I'm on my deathbed, do I want to look back and say that I did the right thing? I stood up for people. I stood my ground. Or did I just cave because money and possessions and having a nice house was more important? Like, you have to look at the core values. I know so many people that took it and now they're not even here anymore, or they have such horrible chronic conditions that they can't even function through life. I mean, people have committed suicide over being in such chronic bad conditions now. And I told my husband right off the bat, I said, if I have to go back to, any kind of job I can get my hands on and live in a tent, I'd rather be healthy and happy and with my family than jeopardize the rest of my life over anything. So just look at the end of the day, do you want to be proud of your decisions? Do you want to do the right thing? Or do you just want to cave and look the other way and be silent just because it's the easy thing to do? Because if it was worth doing, it wouldn't be easy. Even going through nursing school was hard. I know it was hard. Y'all know it was hard. If it wasn't worth doing, it wouldn't have been hard.
Yeah, amen to that. I agree with that sentiment. I said, you know what? If I have to go back to bartending, sleep on people's couches again, I totally would. It was a come what may kind of attitude. But I think what we're describing to you guys and what we really hope to instill in you is some grit, because that's really what pushed us to do this. Grit and hearing from God's voice, right? To say that, listen, there was no shaking of our spirit. We could not get this out. As much as we looked at ourselves, looked at everybody else around us, and we thought we were crazy, right? We're like, wait, maybe I am crazy. Maybe, the whole world's on board with this. Maybe I'm crazy. Well, we come to you here 6 years later. We were not crazy. And unfortunately, we were right. And so, guys, again, I talk about the code of ethics because I did have 18 board complaints against my license. Jennifer, as outspoken as she was on the news media, she actually was on the national news several times. She never had to go in front of the board. And why? Because of ethics. Okay. This is why it's so important. So if you don't know what the code of ethics is, come and hang out with us on April 7th. We start. You can go to righteousrn.com. And thank you guys for listening. And thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for hosting me at your house for a week.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
All right, friends, until next time, be safe, be well, and God bless. Thank you for listening to Nurses Out Loud. Nurses are called by our code of ethics to keep learning, do the research, and lead with moral courage and integrity, especially as healthcare changes. Keep doing the next right thing, especially when it's hard. If this show resonated with you, please like, share, and follow. It boosts us up in the algorithm so more people can find us. Until next time, friends, be safe, be well, and God bless. And if this episode offers continuing education credit, check the show notes for the learning objectives, disclosures, and exactly how to earn your certificate.